Chapter 9. Ding dong! Kevin fell out of bed. His eyes blinked. Sunlight was streaming into his room. For a split second, he wondered how his dad managed to install a new carpet while he was asleep. Then he remembered. The Plaza Hotel. New York. Doorbell. Coming! Kevin picked up his Plaza robe from the floor, put it on, and ran to the door. Good morning, said the bellman as Kevin yanked the door open. In his right hand, he held out a pair of freshly laundered underpants, pinned to a hanger and covered with plastic. Your drawers, sir. Kevin snatched them out of his hands. Hey! Don't flash these babies around, Kevin said, glancing up and down the empty hall. There could be girls on this floor. I was very careful, sir, the bellman said. When it comes to underwear, Kevin replied, you can never be too careful. The bellman gave Kevin a wan smile. Now, Kevin had been in the city long enough to catch on to a few rules of the trade. Never forget to take care of the help. That was an important one. Reaching into his robe pocket, he pulled out a stick of gum and handed it to the bellman. Thank you, sir, the bellman said dryly. Kevin closed the door. All his fear and sadness from the night before had disappeared. With fresh underwear and a good night's sleep, he felt just about ready to face his first full day in New York City. But first, a shower and a shave. After all, no seasoned traveler would dare leave his hotel without that. Whistling, Kevin skipped into the bathroom and stood for a long time under the shower's warm, refreshing steam. Then, wrapping himself in his complimentary bath towel, he stood by the sink and flicked on his complimentary electric razor. He shaved carefully, feeling remarkable smoothness of his cheeks, and combed his hair with his complimentary comb. I'm not entirely crazy about vacationing alone, Kevin said to his mirror image, especially somewhere where I've never been and nobody knows me. But since I can't call my parents because they're not home, I don't know what number they're at. I'll just have to make the best of the situation. On the shelf below the mirror, Kevin saw a bottle marked complimentary aftershave. He picked it up, unscrewed the cap, and sniffed it. Not bad. Sort of limey. I think I'm old enough for this stuff now, he said. A year ago, he had tried some, and it stung like crazy. But he was a kid then, not a seasoned traveler. He splashed some aftershave onto his palm. He rubbed his hands together, then slapped them to his cheeks. Kevin froze. The color drained from his face. In the mirror image, he could see his mouth falling open in a silent gape of pain. A few moments later, Kevin had calmed down. His cheeks had lost their fiery redness. It no longer felt as they'd been scraped by sandpaper and doused with lemon juice. And he'd found a number for a limousine service right near the hotel phone. All expenses conveniently chargeable to his Plaza bill. Kevin slung his backpack over his shoulder. Then he took his dad's cash envelope from the travel bag, stuffed it in his pocket, and went down to the lobby. Strolling up to the concierge's desk, he asked, Is my transportation here? The concierge nodded. Out in front, sir. A limousine and a pizza. By the way, they're compliments of the Plaza Hotel. New York's most exciting hotel experience, Kevin said. I do hope your father understands that last night I was simply checking the room to make sure everything was in order, the concierge said with a toothy smile. So he was the one who was snooping around the night before, Kevin realized. No wonder the limo was free. The concierge must have felt guilty. Well, he was pretty mad, Kevin said. He said he didn't come all the way to New York to get his naked rear end spied on. Of course not. Will he be down soon? He already left. The concierge frowned. I would have liked to offer my personal apology. If some guy looked at you in the shower, would you want to see him ever again? Kevin asked. I suppose not. Kevin shook his head. I don't think you'll see him for the rest of our trip. I understand, the concierge said solemnly. Bye. The concierge smiled stiffly. Have a pleasant day. Kevin bounded away, pushing his way through the Plaza's revolving doors. As he stepped outside, he looked around eagerly for his ride. He didn't have to look far. It was parked right in front of the Plaza, and it was the longest, shiniest, whitest vehicle he'd ever seen. The driver and a Plaza doorman stood beside it, looking straight at Kevin. Through the open rear door came the smell of fresh, hot pizza. Kevin just stood there, his mouth hanging open. It was so big. It had to be someone else's limo. The driver and doorman chuckled at Kevin's reaction, and the driver gestured for him to enter. Slowly, Kevin began to grin. "Buzz," he said under his breath, "if you could see me now." He ran down the plaza steps and practically dove into the limo. Picking up a steaming hot slice of extra cheese pizza, he called to the driver, "Take me to the biggest toy store in town." "You got it," the driver called back. The limo pulled away from the curb, and Kevin thought, this must what it's like in heaven. Behind the plaza check-in desk, the concierge flipped through the hotel's room records. Mansfield, Marshall, Mays. Yes, he had heard the man in the shower. Yes, he had seen the outline of someone quite tall. But none of the check-in staff had seen anyone besides the kid enter or leave. Maybe the kid had pulled some sort of practical joke. McCardle, McBurnery, there it was, McAllister, Peter J. He pulled out the credit card, slipped, and went to the electronic approval machine. Carefully, he punched in the card's number and waited. The machine burbled and clicked, and its little screen went blank. Finally, in bright green letters, a word flashed in front of his eyes. Stolen. Chapter 10. "Get out of here!" Harry picked up his newspaper and stomped his feet angrily. A group of pigeons lazily turned and walked away from him. Harry hated pigeons. Rats with wings, he called them. They didn't know how to leave a guy in peace. He went back to his newspaper. There had to be a clue in there. An ad, an article, someplace that looked easy to rob. Ice skaters whizzed by, but only Marv seemed to notice them. It was a bright, crisp day at the Woolman Rink in Central Park, and the ice was already crowded. While Harry sat back on the park bench, Marv was leaning forward, his eyes darting around. A little boy came skating toward them. His hands were bare, his mittens dangling out of each coat sleeve. He rocked from side to side, coming closer. At the precise moment, Marv reached out and grabbed the boy's mitten. The boy kept going, but the mitten didn't. It came right out of the sleeve with a piece of yarn attached. The yarn kept coming and coming, turning the boy around, then zip! Out popped the other mitten. Marv gathered up the mittens and yarn and gave them to Harry. "Mittens?" he asked. "You want to knock it off, Marv?" Harry said angrily, putting his paper down. "They're wool," Marv said admiringly. "Never mind the mittens," Harry retorted. Marv shrugged and put them in his coat pocket. "We got to face facts," Harry went on. "We don't have the equipment to pull off anything big. Your banks, your jewelry stores, your art museums," Marv added. "Right. We don't want goods because we don't have the connections here yet to hide anything. We need cash, and we need it now." A girl skated by wearing a long scarf. Marv reached out again. He grabbed the scarf tightly. The girl fell to the ice. With a giggle, Marv stuffed her scarf into his pocket. "How about hotels?" Marv suggested. "Tourists carry lots of cash." Harry shook his head. "No guarantees. I've got a better idea. It's Christmas Eve, right? A lot of people do a lot of shopping today, but the stores ain't going to take their money to the banks because the banks are closed, right?" "Yeah," Marv said. "So the money stays in the stores overnight. Now, at the expensive joints, customers mostly use credit cards. So the stores that'll have most cash on hand are the ones that trade in moderate priced goods." "Right. So what store is going to do the most cash business at Christmas time that nobody's going to think to rob?" Marv thought for a minute. "Liquor store." "Come on, Marv. Kids rob liquor stores." He folded his newspaper and held it towards Marv. Sorry. "This is what I had in mind." Marv squinted at a large advertisement for a store called Duncan's Toy Chest. The ad was a busy swirl of bicycles, video games, dolls, and action figures. "Brilliant, Harry," Marv said with a grin. "There's nobody dumb enough to knock off a toy store on Christmas Eve," Harry said. Marv gave Harry a sly, knowing look. "Oh, yes, there is." On a street not far from the plaza, Kevin's driver pulled his limo to the curb. He hopped out and ran around to open Kevin's door. "Here we are, sir," he said. Kevin stepped out onto the bustling sidewalk. His eyes were glued to the store that loomed over him. He had never imagined a toy store this big. No, that wasn't the whole truth. He had never imagined any store this big. It must have been 7 stories high and a full block wide. The front window didn't look like a display. It looked like a whole city of toys. Train tracks snaked around piles of games, all flecked with fake snow. Whistling and chugging away, miniature railroad cars passed miniature people who waved in response. A Santa flew above it all, driving 8 reindeer with kicking legs. Christmas carols tinkled loudly in the background, and lights blinked in the windows of dozens of tiny houses. Over the front door was a huge mechanical toy chest that opened and closed, revealing animated toys inside. On the chest, surrounded by brightly colored lights, were the words, Duncan's Toy Chest. Kevin could barely speak. "Merry Christmas, Kevin," he whispered to himself. The driver shut Kevin's door. "When shall I come back for you, sir?" he called out. "What time is it now?" Kevin asked. 9:30, the driver replied. How about 3 o'clock? 3? The driver raised his eyebrows in surprise. "That's 5.5 hours. Kevin thought it over. Okay, he said. "Make it 3:30. "Yes, sir," the driver said. He climbed back into the window and drove away. Kevin unlocked his eyes from the window. He elbowed his way through the throng of shoppers and barged inside. If the window was like a city of toys, the store itself was a galaxy, a universe of pleasure. Kevin had to stand still to take it all in. Wherever he looked, walls, ceilings, floors, there was something he wanted. A radio-controlled plane whizzed from one end of the store to the other. Boats floated around in the water tanks. A popcorn machine rat-a-tat-tatted away next to an old-fashioned ice cream parlor. Kids were playing with demonstration toys, and the salespeople weren't even yelling at them. In fact, they were all smiling. Kevin felt so high he thought his feet would leave the ground. "This is the greatest accident of my life," he muttered to himself. Then, wasting no time, he plunged into action. He grabbed a pair of pistols from a display counter, shoved a helmet over his head, and whooped at the top of his lungs. Near the counter was a trampoline, so Kevin jumped right on it. He bounced up and down, screaming with joy. At the top of each jump, he seemed to hover in the air. That was his favorite part, and considering the way he was feeling, he wouldn't have been surprised if he ever came down. On the second floor of Duncan's toy chest, in a quiet section marked Outdoor Playhouses, 2 kid-sized wooden shingled houses stood side by side. At once, both front doors slowly opened. Harry and Marv peered out, looking cautiously around. "Nice house," Marv commented as he stepped out, "but no bathroom." "Perfect hiding places," Harry said. "Everybody leaves for a nice holiday off. We come out of our little houses and empty the cash registers. We turn off the burglar alarm and walk out like we own the joint. Too bad we can't take the houses. We'll need a place to live." "Will you come on?" Harry said, walking away. "Let's get out of this place before anyone gets suspicious." They took the escalator down into the mass of shrieking kids on the first floor. Harry was definitely looking forward to the nighttime hours. "Silent night." Harry smiled when he heard the familiar carol. A real silent night was only a few hours away. He couldn't wait. Chapter 11. A bag of mini robots, a bottle of Monster Sap super slippery bubble bath bubbles, a deluxe stainless steel jackknife, a Game Gear, a couple of game cartridges. Kevin loaded each item onto the checkout counter. He would have chosen more, but this was about all he could carry. "Are you shopping alone?" asked the old man behind the cash register. "In New York," Kevin replied as if the question were incredibly silly. "Sir, I'm afraid of my own shadow." The old man laughed. His belly jiggled beneath his neat 3-piece suit. "Well, I like to check." "That's very responsible of you." "Thank you. My pleasure." The man's fingers tapped out the prices on the cash register. "That'll be $23.75. Can't get much for that nowadays. Kevin pulled his dad's cash envelope out of his pocket. He took out 2 $20 bills and handed them to the man. "Oh my," the man said. "Where did you get all that money?" Kevin thought quickly. "I have a lot of grandmothers." The old man nodded as he put Kevin's things in a bag. "You have a really nice store here," Kevin said, changing the subject. "One of the finer toy dealerships I visited in my life." Thank you, the old man replied. This Mr. Duncan must be a pretty nice guy to let kids come in his toy stores and play with the toys. Most toy stores prohibit that, you know. Is that so? Yep. Well, Mr. Duncan loves kids. As a matter of fact, all the money the store takes in today, he donates to the Children's Hospital. The day after Christmas, we total up all the money in the cash registers, and Mr. Duncan takes it down to the hospital. That's very generous of him, Kevin said. Children bring him a lot of joy, the old man said, handing Kevin his bag, as they do for anyone who appreciates them. I can relate to that. Kevin took the bag and turned to leave, but he couldn't help thinking of the Children's Hospital. Imagine what it must be like to be there on Christmas, he thought, surrounded by sad and sick kids, away from home and family. He stopped. Reaching into his envelope, he pulled out another 20. He turned back to the old man. I'm not supposed to spend this money, but I have $20 from shoveling snow in a jar in our garage where my older brother can't find it, and I can pay my mother back with that. Kevin held out the money to the elderly cashier. So you can give this to Mr. Duncan. The hospital needs it more than me, because I'll probably just spend it on stuff that rots my teeth and my mind. That's very sweet of you, the man replied with a grateful smile. As he took the money, he gestured to something behind Kevin. Now you see that Christmas tree right there? Kevin turned. The tree was only a couple of feet high, but it was dazzling. Among the glittering lights were tiny handcrafted figurines. A music box played the song, The 12 Days of Christmas, and Kevin realized the figurines were the objects of that song. There were 12 lords a-leaping, 11 pipers piping, or something like that. In appreciation of your generosity, the old man said, I'm going to let you select an object from that tree to take with you. For free? Kevin said in amazement. Yes, sir. May I make a suggestion? Okay. Take the 2 turtle doves. I can have 2? The old man nodded. 2 turtle doves, and I'll tell you what you do. You keep one, and you give the other one to a person who's very special to you. Turtle doves are a symbol of friendship and love. So long as the 2 of you each have your turtle doves, you'll be friends no matter how far away you might be, even if you never see each other again. So long as you each have the turtle doves, you'll be friends. Wow, Kevin said. I didn't know that. I thought they were just part of a song. They are, the old man replied, and for a reason. Kevin plucked the 2 turtle doves off the tree. They really were cool looking, with incredible detail, and who knew? After what the old man had said, they might even come in handy someday. He put them in his pocket and took his shopping bag from the counter. Thanks. Merry Christmas, the man said. Merry Christmas to you, too. Be sure and bundle up when you go outside. It's a little nippy. The old man smiled again, and he and Kevin waved goodbye. Clutching his bag, Kevin walked toward the front door. Beside it was a shelf full of pamphlets and maps. Kevin took a sightseeing map of New York and put it in his bag. Just before he passed through the door, he caught a glimpse of a large portrait above it. There was a name carved in brass underneath the portrait, E.F. Duncan. Kevin glanced upward and stopped short. The hair was a little darker, the belly a little smaller, but other than that, the man in the picture was a dead ringer for the old cashier. Kevin spun around to look at the man again, but he was gone. Just before he and Harry got to the second floor stairs, Marv stopped at a display table. There was a stack of long, hairy gorilla arms with pink rubber fingertips. He put one on and fiddled around with the controls inside. The fingers began moving around. Giggling, Marv tucked the forearm into his coat sleeve. Harry, check it out, he called. When Harry turned around, Marv held up the arm and gnashed his teeth. Come on, egghead, quit messing around, Harry said. This might be nice for picking pockets. Put it down. Watch, I'll pick my own pocket. Harry shook his head. You're really a moron, you know that? Marv reached behind him. He twisted his arm around, trying to reach for his own back pants pocket. It was harder than he expected without being able to see what was going on. There was something else he didn't see. A crowd of shoppers right behind him. As the gorilla paw groped around his fingers, its fingers caught on the hem of a skirt. Unfortunately for Marv, the skirt was on a living human being. And this human being was not amused. With a gasp, she whirled around to see the hairy paw. Marv whirled around too. He was just as surprised as she was, especially when he saw her face. He knew who she was. In fact, just the previous day, she'd been the one who had slapped him in the face as he crossed the street. Marv just stared, too dumb and embarrassed to say a word. The woman grabbed the toy arm. She reached into it and pulled the levers. The paw's index and middle fingers jutted straight out. Then she jabbed Marv firmly in his dumbstruck face. It was 3:20 when Kevin stepped out of the store. The limo was due in 10 minutes. He slipped his purchases into his backpack, keeping out the jackknife and the sightseeing map. The knife was thick with different attachments. He pulled out a nail file, a corkscrew, a small can opener. Ah, there it was, a magnifying glass. Looking through the lens, he inspected the map. Along the side were photos and drawings of different sites. He paused at each one. Behind him, the store's front door swung open. Out came Harry and Marv, squinting in the afternoon sunlight. Harry looked up and down the street. His eyes stopped when he saw Kevin's backpack. The name McAllister was stenciled on the strip of canvas across the top. Harry began to grin. His face brightened with the purest, most evil sense of victory. The rays of sun glinted against the silver-toothed cap he had gotten in prison. Like a mirror, the shiny cap reflected in the sun. It sent a pinpoint beam of strong white light through Kevin's magnifying glass. The lenses strengthened the light and made it brighter and hotter. It landed on the photo Kevin was studying. Kevin admired the picture of the Statue of Liberty, especially the realistic torch. It looked as though it actually were glowing. When it burst into real flames, Kevin dropped the map. He jumped back and caught sight of two people standing behind him. He spun around. His breath caught in his throat. The two bandits smiled back at him. Harry's tooth still shone brightly. "Hiya, pal," said Harry. Oh boy, they ran into each other. Join me for the next reading to see what happens.